Kwazwai, Muria Zimbabwe, Mtwakaza Muhle. Welcome, Muria Zimbabwe to The Connection, Studio 7's very own youth program that targets tackling anything and everything youth related. Usually I like to say we're coming to you live from Studio 7, Voice of America, but today we're coming to you live from our individual homes. Due to the coronavirus, unfortunately, we're not able to broadcast that live from the studio. Everybody's had to work from home. I'm sure you've been following the news. Ikakhulukazi lapha kwele Melika, eneng labantu kuthiwa sokumele sisebenzele ngekhaya. Today we're coming to you live from my couch. But we're also going to have other guests who are also going to be coming and joining our live stream, coming from us live from their individual homes. Nasi mchironga muri Zimbabwe, we're discussing udaba ngomkhuhlane weCoronavirus. As we speak, coronavirus is responsible for taking hundreds of thousands of lives due to this virus that a lot of people seem to not understand what it's all about, where it's coming from, and the history behind the coronavirus. So today in The Connection, we're going to be catching up with youth. We're going to be figuring out iwo kwawari nokuti vari kupinda vari kunyika dzakasiyana siyana, umwe ari kuEngland, umwe ari kwariko kumbiri kudiaspora. Bazave vechitshela ukuthi what exactly is happening in their individual countries when we're talking about udaba lwe-coronavirus. Now, as we speak, yesterday, Zimbabwe recorded its first death. 30-year-old Zororo Makamba, the son of James Makamba, businessman himself, Zororo Yena was a broadcaster. So as we kick off this program, I'd like to say Langalezo, my condolences to the Makamba family. The whole nation itself just lost a very talented young broadcaster. So Langalezo Ukolo. And joining me, I see, is my first guest, Umnumzana Ufarai Muvuti, and I also have Glenn Liwayo. Farai, welcome to the program. How are you, Chief?
Hey, Mike, how are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Glenn, what's good, brothers?
I'm all right, man. Self-quarantining as always.
Join the club, aren't we all, man? Thank you guys for taking time out to join us on The Connection. Today, we're obviously going to focus, like I mentioned early on the coronavirus and how it's affecting your lives and wherever you are. Glenn, you mentioned quarantine. I'm sure Farai, you're also in quarantine. I'm also I'm not in quarantine. I'm in self-isolation.
I mean, you can play around.
Thank you so much, guys, for making time out. My first question, I guess I'm opposed to, we'll start off with Glenn, because you were the first to mention quarantine. What's life like where you are? Could you tell the people where you are and what exactly is going on? Because a lot of people are not understanding how coronavirus is leading to such circumstances and what exactly is happening all over the world. So could you just break it down for people where you are?
So I'm in York in England. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, of course, we started off by discussing the quarantine term, and all of these terms are just being thrown around loosely. But we have been in self-isolation for the longest. I think I've personally been in my own personal self-isolation for about a week now. But also government has been leading in terms of providing what can be seen as the government's response in terms of how the country reacts to the cases that we have right now. So every day, we have a press conference by the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. I think what is pretty much interesting right now, or something to take note about, is that last night he made a press conference that amounted to sort of restrictions that could be viewed by some as a lockdown. Mm-hmm. Didn't use those words in particular, but mm-hmm. What Boris Johnson's statement, the import of it is that the restrictions are just meant to make sure that people stay within, they stay indoors. So mm-hmm. it's limiting all non-essential movement. You're only allowed to go out if you have to go and get shopping, and even that should be when it is. It should be when it is essential, and it should be very infrequent. Mm-hmm. You're allowed one form of exercise a day, and I think this is taking into account people's well-being and mental health in times like this. So you're allowed mm-hmm. to go out for either a walk, a jog, or cycle. You're allowed to go alone or with members of your household. Mm-hmm. And if you're going out, you have to be 2 meters away from everybody. Parks are still going to be open for people to go in there. The restrictions also are banning all kinds of public gatherings mm-hmm. of more than 2 people. And this is pretty much interesting because most countries are saying of not more than 100. Here it's
not 152. That's
exactly.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
They've banned all church gatherings, all sort of public gatherings, but funerals are allowed. That's the caveat there. But I think what is happening is that the UK has been taking, they've always been saying this, the UK government and the US is saying that we're following the science. we're following what the science dictates. And they've also taken a component of allowing people a kind of responsibility, taking people as adults who are able to make these kind of decisions in a critical time like this. So the restrictions that Boris Johnson talked about yesterday will require a lot of cooperation from citizens. Of course, they can be enforced by the police. The police can fine, or other measures that they can use, including dispersing gatherings. But when you look at that, you take the tone that the Prime Minister is relying on people being adults, being able to understand what is going on, taking on the information, and making decisions that keep them and other people safe.
Now, let me head over to Farai. Farai, you're also in UK, so I'm pretty sure you're experiencing something very similar to what Uklen is is talking about. Kodwa lapha eNgilandi Farai sike saxoxa le ntatheli izindaba yethu Ezra Sibanda, and he's also based in UK, and he was talking about how abantu bakhanya ngani balenkani. They don't seem to want to abide by the laws that the Prime Minister is setting up. What's going on in the area where you're living? Are people abiding by the laws, and what's going on?
Well, like I said, Mike, thanks again for having me. Allow me, please, to on a personal capacity as well as on behalf of my family, to pass my due condolences to the Makamba family. I think in Zororo we lost a giant of a media titan who was just beginning to get his story unfolding, and I think the arts industry has been hit hard, especially for those who are quite in close proximity to his genius. And I think we've lost a titan. And I think to couple the answer to your question with that very same experience, there is a sense of lack of seriousness to appreciating how the depth of this this pandemic. And I think there is that cultural sort of laissez-faire approach to things where they, because it's simply a recommendation, people still feel that they shouldn't really take heed to it. But I think the final call yesterday made it more clear that, listen, it's now going to be a partial lockdown, and we're going to actually take measures to try and safeguard life. Because the numbers have since grown. We've gone to over about 230 the last time I checked. It's gone above that. And if you look at the areas that we're in, France, for instance, it's growing rapidly. As you're seeing in the European areas, it's equally growing rapidly. There are only pockets where it's being contained. And it's the unpredictability of it, where you are not, the sciences are not as clear. I think one of the things that I've been trying to encourage the people within my network is to sort of read about it. So there's a free course online hosted by Alison. It's a website called alison.com. You just go on there and you do your course. It's literally under an hour. You get to understand the virus so that you get rid of the stigma that's associated to it. And sometimes it's as a consequence of a lack of information, really, that our attitudes as a society are not really altering to the seriousness that's required as to addressing the issue. But I think from yesterday, from what the PM said, I think there's now a level of seriousness now. I think we're seeing more people. More people are adhering to the quarantine requirements. Like today, I think I stubbornly went out for a jog, even though I haven't been out for a jog in a very long time. But I didn't want to feel the imposition. So I thought that where I'm allowed, at least let me exploit that. So we are allowed to, run, exercise. You are allowed to go to the parks. What you're not allowed to do is to sort of, be in restaurants. Restaurants are closed. Pubs are closed. Places of social scenes that are not of essential benefit to the immediate society are equally closed. And so I think it's going to be a slow burn because remember, bearing in mind that the government itself only started looking at this quite seriously last week. They wanted to have a measured approach to officiating a shutdown because they deemed they were considerate of the market forces and the complex issues of governance itself. So one might say that they sort of came late to the party, considering what France did. There was sort of like a prompt action, but also France had to take these precautions at the backdrop of having its own internal domestic issues as well. Italy had to deal with it as it did because it was more, rapid in terms of its growth trajectory in comparison to the UK, where we've seen somewhat of a slowdown in the UK, but they are projecting there is a trajectory that it might rise, and it's yet to be seen. So to counter that, the scientific advice was to do it in a slow burn approach.
Slow pace.
Yeah, so it's all different to different areas. Like in America, I'm seeing you guys. Your shutdown is quite different. We're seeing a lot more numbers. So it's all different so that the WHO rules are non-binary. It's really based on the demographic, and then the governments themselves have the discretion to seeing how they can approach that issue, depending on what the local science and the local demographics say. So there is no one cap fits all type of approach.
All right. So my comments is Bonu Aida. Bula uti hi. In France, every movement you have to carry an attestation, or you'll be given a bill of £130. At first, the bill was 35, but the Parisians were stubborn to abide by the law. Then they increased it to 130. Sure. Yeah, this thing is serious. Now, Glenn, you still there?
Yes, I'm here, Mike.
All right. Now, a lot of things seem to be playing out with this. You mentioned a lot of the measures that they're taking in the United Kingdom. If we look at America, a lot of things seem to be crumbling, especially when we focus on the economy. A lot of people have lost jobs as we speak. A lot of people, a lot of experts are saying that America might rise to 20% unemployment after this whole situation. What is the employment situation looking like, Kwamuri Kokoko UK?
To be honest, I don't quite have the numbers in terms of unemployment. But when you look at certain indices that help you to understand whether the economy is contracting or expanding. For example, when you look at the FTSE, it dropped down by about 26 or 28% yesterday. I'm not quite sure exactly. Yesterday or the day before. And obviously that has an impact in terms of employability of people and the capacity of the economy to employ people. But before we even look into the aftermath of it, I think what is important to look into in terms of employment and the livelihoods of people is to say if companies are closing right now, where people have 0-hour contracts. So for example, imagine a person who gets paid per hour to work in a restaurant, to work in a food outlet. Now that has been closed because people can't go out to buy food. All of these people are just waking up jobless. And unfortunately, on top of that, they had 0-hour contracts, which means they didn't have enough social protections. They probably didn't have medical insurance. They probably didn't have a savings. So I think definitely economies are contracting. You saw what happened in the US where the government came out with at least a 2.2 trillion financial stimulus, combined the reserve and the Federal Reserve and the government. That is a way of trying to make sure that businesses still are able to employ, businesses are still able to function as normal. But it is inevitable that we're going to get into some form of recession on the backs of COVID-19. But what I think is more important right now, even for the future planning of economies, is to think about everybody, especially the weakest in terms of human beings in employment, to say if situations like these, shocks like this happen again, how are we covering the weakest? I don't know. There's a video that has been going around in Turkey where people have been leaving food in the streets for those that are not able to buy, because people are awake to that reality that some people buy food every day. And I was talking to some people on Twitter as well, where we were saying, people, stay back home, do not go out. And this is somebody in Zimbabwe who was saying, my brother, the reality is you eat in the evening what you kill during the day. And so for people who are living from hand to mouth, this is more of what is happening right now before we even start to look at the impact after we have contained COVID-19 and seeing what is its greater impact on the economy as a whole.
Now, Matot, let's talk about local kwenzakalayo in Zimbabwe. Njengelizwe, we just lost our first person, the very young person, 30-year-old. It was really a lot of people say it was unexpected. Because a lot of people seem to believe that coronavirus is either something that's affecting people with a weak immune system or someone of an older generation. Yet, Namuhla 30, turning 30 this year, and Dio Kutanga, who we lost as a nation. Tipe wondering you, Glenn, would you say kuti this pandemic is being taken very seriously, especially kind of attempts at Zimbabwe.
First of all, I just want to pass my condolences to the Makamba family, and also to just say may Zororo Makamba's rest in peace. I think when you just want to look at the social feelings and the social temperatures in terms of what people are saying about corona, people have been taking it, lightly. First of all, people thought it was the China virus. There's this whole raging debate of where it originated from, and trying to attribute it to certain people. And then at some point, celebrities started coming out reporting that they've tested positive. And this was, for example, Idris Elba. A lot of people on social media came out questioning that. Is it real? Has he just been paid to make it look like black people can also get that? And there have been people who've been spreading misinformation, some that look like very legit on the internet. I've received links that say black people cannot get the virus because their skin resists that, or Africa will not get coronavirus because it's pretty hot in that area, so the virus cannot survive in such arid temperatures. But I think what is very important at such a time as this, and this is a debate we'll need to have further, is the level of misinformations and fake news that is spreading around, and how it has caused people either to relax or has caused people to have some false comfort. Now, when you look in Zimbabwe, for example, the death of Zororo Makamba has now brought the corona discussion into the public space. But again, when you look at that, think of it as how many young people knew Zororo Makamba, and how many people afford internet to get onto Twitter, to get onto social media, to be able to access such information. So it may seem as if this has been, it has may his soul rest in peace, but it has brought attention onto the topic. But again, it is in a secluded sort of demographic. Rural people did not probably know Zororo Makamba. They don't have access, and even within the urban centers, there are cleavages of young people that did not know him, that did not associate with him or the kind of work he does, and that do not have access to social media again. And so let's not also even think that this has gone a long way in terms of bringing the discussion to the fore. But I think what is important now is people realizing this is real. Yesterday, I saw on social media somebody saying, this corona, they must show, and they don't think peer pressure kind. I retweeted that on my Twitter because it may look silly to you. Why are they retweeting this? But it brings you to understand how people are reacting and how people are thinking about this. Bear in mind, there are people who haven't even heard about it. As we speak, there are people who don't even know what is corona, what is COVID. There are nurses that really don't even know how to treat a person if a person is going to go and walk in and say, I have corona. There are doctors, medical doctors of note who have been there for years. If you look at the family statement by the Makambas, they say that the person who was responsible as the focus point at Wilkins turned his phone off. Now, I don't know. I don't think people are not as empathetic as that, but probably the man has gone to the end of his wits. He doesn't know what to do. And at the base of a health system that cannot withstand what is on our hands right now. Now, you ask me, what is government's response? Medical doctors of note who have been there for years to this. Now, the government recently just set up an interministerial task force. And even when you look at the terms of references of that interministerial task force, it says to appraise the president on the goings on of the virus. It doesn't. You see, at this point, government has to understand that our people do not have sources of information. They have to come up with a well-coordinated structure that looks into making sure that they nip it before it starts spreading. I don't understand why, with the health systems that we haven't taken very stiffer restrictions, because right now, as it seems, we haven't even been started doing mandatory testing. We're not there. We may not even be there. We will not be able to even institute widespread testing. So even when you have cases where you know that there's patient number 1, patient number 2, they've tested positive, have we gone to the extent of tracing each and every person that they have been with and started to taste who these people are and who other people they can infect? No, we haven't done that. We need government, I've been saying this, we need government to have a situation room where they have to actually speak to people at every instance instead of being beaten by other people who are not authorities to speak about issues. Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, our government, our politicians just have to have the discipline of making sure that they are responsible in terms of how they convey information about corona. I feel like people have taken this, both Zororo Makamba's death, the coronavirus, as a chance to politic. And I think it's not the time to do that. I think it's the time to actually bring ourselves together, put our heads together and say, hey, let's find each other. How can we respond to this? Do you have ideas? Do you have people? Do you have manpower? Do you have expertise in terms of how we can respond to this? Instead of trying to ring fence or trying to be the first to the news. I think that is a high sign of irresponsibility on the part of our leaders.
Siyabona ku Facebook uAida uphinde wabhala wathi the death of Zorro Makamba is a wake up call to the Zimbabwean government. Hayi siyabonga ngombono wakho Aida. Farai bengicela ukuthi ukhulume either ngesindebele or ngesishona whichever or ulakho ukuhlanganisa. Awusitshela umbono wakho. What do you think nxa sisikhuluma ngodaba lwe coronavirus eZimbabwe? Do you think abantu are getting enough information?
I think Utabalolo, it comes with a very different, it's particularly different because you see, in order for us to seize this, we have to look at it from not just a perspective of Zimbabwe, but because Zimbabwe does not exist in a vacuum, but we exist in a global ecosystem. So some of the challenges, now in terms of preparedness, perhaps, like most countries, more could be done in terms of raising awareness. More could be done in terms of the equipment gap that's there. But I think part of the issues that we're seeing are a global phenomenon. As you're seeing, in UK, there's lack of equipment. There's quite a radical shortage of PPE equipment and for amadokotela and so forth. And in terms of even I even read a reporter in New York. Of course, you're in Washington, but in New York, there are equally much challenges in terms of getting insufficient hospital equipment. I think one thing that, as to ease panic, is for us to realize, this is a pandemic that sets a new precedence in global issues. The world has not seen such an issue since World War II. So for over 3 decades, the world has never seen such an issue. Okay, and so we're all faced with a riotous calamity, and there's need for a cool head when approaching, and the willingness to point at a finger, be it the work of the work of the staff who have the duty of care when it comes to handling these into ezinje. There's need for us as a society what our equal civic duty is. Necessary seriousness to it. Yeah, I was watching a video, Pastor Evans Mawarire, where he was cautioning his society to a sense of seriousness. Deal with something that is so precarious and so dangerous simultaneously. So there is that need. Now, in terms of preparedness, I would not just look at it from a governmental perspective. I would equally look at it from a societal perspective, from a system, from a social consciousness perspective as well. What is the level of the citizen's responsibility, and is he acting accordingly? What is the level of government responsibility? Are they equally acting accordingly? What is the level of business community, and labo ba actor accordingly? Because nyaika inoda aidi munhu imwe chete kai. Surely kana zvichitadza hurumende dzemuno vano contribute above 5% GDP kune healthcare system yavo zvichivakonewa ivo kuisu vasina macapacities ekuti ticontribute even 1.2% of our GDP towards the healthcare system yedu. Saka zvinotiremerera, saka zvinotibatsira, zvinovaka nyika kuzvitarisa nenzira yazvinofanira kutariswa sezvazviri. Tiri mumusha wekuti musha wedu is not isolated. Tinogara nevamwe, tinorarama nevamwe, uye zvakakodzera kuti tione nyaya as a society, what our duty is. To a degree, it was unfortunate. About Zororo, I looked at it. I tried to look at the case. I was quite broken up about it because Mumuntu Atasimazi Sebenza doing a great job in raising the awareness of our country's issues and trying to present a more nuanced narrative as to the challenges that our country was facing. So someone was pivotal, especially in the areas of work that we do here. You and I working in the media, I suppose, we benefit from his sort of contribution. And I suppose it didn't help that the underlying condition that was there, I think, and this is why it's important, when we approach such issues, to try to depoliticize them. And this is the problem I feel that we have in Zimbabwe, where everything becomes a political discussion, but a life has been lost here. A family has to still deal and contend with that. And the politicization of everything about our country, further breaks down the fabric. It eats into our potential to become more tolerant, especially during a time when the world itself is coming together. Zimbabwe shouldn't be left behind. The pandemic should teach us lessons that we all have a collective responsibility. It's all our responsibility to raise awareness, as it is, of course, government's position responsibility. But what are we doing as individually? And I think instead of politicizing this, be it a ZANU-PF person or an MDC person, I think this is the time when, if politics was sort of like an elephant in the room. This is when we ask the elephant to, walk out. And, let's be human. Let's just be human.
Waziwangikhumbuza lokho kwenzakalayo kwele South Africa lapho sibone uPresident Ramaphosa delivering the speech kanye lo Julius Malema bendawonye talking about udaba lwe-coronavirus, and they were addressing the nation together. Into leyo khanya ngani iqhakathekile ngempela that all leaders come together to address udaba lwe-coronavirus.
Yeah, Mike, if you think about it, just to add on quickly to that, if you think about it, Italy has lost 5% of its entire population. This is similar to what happened to the famine during the Irish famine, where you saw a huge chunk of people die. This is how close. It's probably as close as we'll get in the contemporary sense to the Black Plague. So we're talking serious lives here. So a society that will be divided now will not be able to contend with the issues that will come if indeed death rates are to go high. The only way to anticipate it best is to redeem ourselves from a blame culture and work alongside government and work alongside the institutions that are there. There's no other. There are no other institutions. So zakalala uyenze.
Jason Maposa, I think you guys have to give us some sort of information, not blame the government. Uphinde wabhala wathi cela ukungena mfowethu, hayi sakufaka ikhona ilink esafaka ngizacela ukuthi ufitizele khonapha then uzangena kuhlelo. Glenn, Tobopinda Mnyai ne Rimi Ramai. Now, Manzaz Wataro Nafara, it's not time to be finger pointing. Uyibasara ningi. Now, in Ndombo, Batanya is the role that the business community has. Ndakaona imwe video yangaipopa ndemtanda pa Twitter. Ye zvakaitwa nevanotyira makombi South Africa uko vangwachi apa nezikuline remakombi mota dzichisanitizwa kuitira kuti macustomer anopinda vanenge vachiziva kuti aiwa vapinda muenvironment apo panenge pane utsanana, it's cleanliness, kuhlanzekile. Now, do you think it's something important for, especially tichitarisa nyaya yekuti vazhinji kuZimbabwe vanoshandisa public transport nezuro takatorana article vazhinji vachichema vachita hongu, of course we understand that it's difficult kutisagade takawanda in one area, but tese tinenge tichingoshandisa mazupo, tese tinenge tichingoshandisa makombi because it's the most efficient way for people to get about. Do you think it's important kuti ivo vatyairi vemota idzi they take it upon themselves to ensure that their cars are clean, and two, anawindi vanenge vari mumota imomo vanenge vachinyatsotsanangurira munhu wese kuti ndizvo zvavanofanira kuita to ensure that havabati chirwere checoronavirus?
Ndinofunga kuti zviitike kudai munhu wese ane chikamu chake chaanofanira kunge achiita. Kana ndichiti munhu wese ndinoreva kutanga even kune vanhu vanoita kuti vanhu vachikwira makombi nemabhazi vachienda kunzvimbo dzavanoshandira, kungava kumabasa, kungava kuzvikoro, whatever it is. Kana vachikwanisa kuti vanhu vashande vari kudzimba ngazviitike. Izvezvi ndiri kunzwa pane vanhu vangu vachitaura kuti tiri pa-attachment hapana chachinja pamabasa, hapana masanitizer pamabasa, hapana kana chiri kuratidza kuti pane zviri kuitika zvichingofanana nema-government departments as well. Saka kuti isusu tichitarisira vanhu vemabhazi vega kuti vachiita kunyange zvazvo zviri zvo zvakanaka kuti vemabhazi vadzidzise vanhu, paitofanira kunge pane chirongwa Mike chekuti hurumende inoona kuti tinokwanisa kubata vanhu neyatingati messaging yecorona nevakomana ivava tovadzidzisa tovatora kuti titarisire kuti winda asingatoziva kuti covid yacho inofamba sei anogona kudzidzisa vanhu zvisiri izvo. Saka nekudaro ndinofunga kuti zvakakosha kuti vadzidziswe, zvakakosha kuti varidzi vemabhazi acho vachiita zvinoita kuti pave neutsanana kana kuti maconditions ekuti vanhu vasabatire corona iyi. But tangovatora vari ivo vega tinenge tisina zvataita nekuti ingori component 1 yebusiness reZimbabwe kana kuti yecommerce neeconomy yeZimbabwe. Kana ndichidaro ndinoreva kuti mabhazi anogona kutoshaya vanhu vanopinda vakaita vashoma. Kuno hakuna mbobvera kwanzi mabhazi vanhu ngavarambidze vanhu kupinda kana ngavagadzise kuti vanhu vagare vaite tutu. But vanhu vakatanga kumira kunzi imbomirai kuenda kumabasa nekuda kwekuti ikonomi yakagadzirwa nenzira yekuti vanhu vanokwanisa kushanda vari kudzimba dzavo. Now kuti vanhu vashanda vari kudzimba dzavo zvichada internet ndipo patinotanga kufungawo kuti kana maservice provider edu akarasana net1 naEconet naTeleso vachikwanisa panogona kuuya mameasures ekuti data kana kuti internet ichipe vanhu vakwanise kushanda vari kumba only for a period kusvika tacontaina chinhu ichi, especially anonga vari maparastatal ehurumende vadzikise mitengo yekuti vanhu vakwanise kuita basa ravo online padande mutande kana painternet. Vakwanisa kudaro zvinogona kuva izvowo nyore nekuti izvezvi ukatanga kufunga kuti vana vechikoro vakanzi endai munodzidza muri kumba kana zvakanzi vadzidze vari kumba dai zvaiita. Hatina hedu infrastructure yacho yekuti maticha anorekodha maclasses omaisa voita kuti vana vadzidze vaite maexam nepachi zvese padande mutande reinternet. Asi dai tatinaro vana vacho mari yedhata chaiyo vanoiwana kupi? Ndo zvimwe zvezvinhu zvatinokwanisa kuti titange kuchifunga. But tichienderera mberi nekuti munhu nemunhu ane chinangwa chake. Ndaitaura neshamwari yangu takagara tichiona mavhidhiyo. Pane vhidhiyo iri kutrenda inonzi safe hands challenge iri kuitwa nevatungamiriri venyika vanhu vachigeza maoko. Ndobva andibvunza zvikanzi ndo kuZimbabwe zvikanzi izvi zviri kuitirwa ani izvi? Zviri kuitirwa kuti anani vaone. Zvanga zvisati zvapinda mandiri. But paakazotanga kutsanangura akatsanangura akati zviri kuitirwa vanhu kuti vanhu vaone, but mabathroom amuri kubudisa akanyanyochena zvekuti haisiriyo bathroom yekugetu, haisiriyo bathroom yeaverage Zimbabwean. Saka vanongofunga kuti zvekugeza maoko izvi ndezvechi? NdezvemaZimbabwean, ndezvevane mari, ndezvekumusoroku. 2, idea yekuisa sanitizer zvinoita kunge kana pasina sanitizer maoko agezwe. Chero sipo chaiyo anzi munokwanisa kugeza nayo. 3, munhu wese ari kuita safe hands yake nyange ari muZimbabwe ari kuita nechingezi nechirungu. Asi muri kuda kuti zvisvike kupi? Kuna ani? Ndiani wamuroda kuti anzwe? Nechekupedzisira ndechekuti vanhu vane matepa nemvura inobuda iri running here kana muchiti safe hands. Saka taitawo safe hands challenge yeduwo isusu inoenderana nemacondition edu inoitira kuti vanhu vedu vadzidze zvavanokwanisa kuita vorarama. Handizi kana makaona pane organization iri kudzidzisa vanhu kugeza nezvigubhu so zvinotsikwa chitanda chobudisa mvura zvekuti hapachabate. Zvinhu zvakadaro zvinobatika zvekuti munhu nemunhu anokwanisa kudzidza kuti inini nepandiri ndingaita sei kuti ndizvichengetedze ndisabatire corona. Ndodzidzisawo ari pamberi kuti asabatire corona. And then totarisa futi nyaya yebusiness ramambotaura. Vari kutengesa mumashop kunoko vakasvika papoint yekuti vakuti munhu achabvumidzwa kutenga more than 3 paitems echinhu chimwe chete. Tichasvika panguva yepanic buying. KuZimbabwe pane shamwari yangu atondodza zvikanzi shamwari hatitorina hupfu izvezvi sekutaura kwatiri kuita. Panoda planning ipapo ino-include hurumende kuti zvoitwa sei kana zvasvika panguva yekuti vanhu vachaiswa mulockdown nzi hamuchabudi vanhu vanoda kudya. Muchaita sei kuti vanhu ava vakwanise kudya? Saka ipapo pachadiwa futi ndofunga task force ichaita izvozvo kuti vachashedza macaptains of industries vochitanga kuita maplans now. Scenario plan yekuti zvakati zvikaitika tichaitei, zvakati zvikaitika tichaitei. Iwewo uchange uchita chi? Munhu nemunhu oziva kuti chake chekuita pazviri kuitika izvi ndechipi. Vashamarari vanhu vanotaura pamaredhiyo vachiziva kuti kana zvichireva kuti every hour pachaiswa message yakati handizozive zviri kuitika panguva ino ndezvipi, but zviri kuita sekuti vanhu vachiri kuona kunge zvichiri kure. Asi tatova nemunhu atofa iri case number 2. Kune dzimwe nyika vanotombomirira mamwe macases. And then chimwe chananga ndichida kutaura ndechekuti tikateerera nyaya yekushayika kwakaita Zororo Makamba, pane nyaya dzine chekuita nekugadzirira kurwisa corona iyi from a health perspective dzinobudiswa pachena kuti takati kundikanei senyika. Chekutanga ndechekuti Wilkins munhu wese anoziva kuti one of the symptoms eCovid kuti munhu achanetsekana nekufema. pachada ventilator yekuti munhu iye afeme zvakanaka. Zvino zvoita sekuti panonzi panga pasina ventilator paWilkins pakasvika mukomana uyu. Handiti vanotaurazve vachiti takatozounza ventilator pakashaya aigona kuishandisa. Zvinhu zvekuti vanhu vanoluza trust nehurumende ende vanhu vanofa. Vanhu vanosvika panguva yekuti the same way yakasvika vanhu panguva yekuti hatiendesa mari dzedu mabhengi dzinogara pasi pepilo. Vanhu vangona ngosvika kuti unofira aka kuhospital. Mukanzwa kundenderedzwa kwakaita mhuri kana zvavataura zvirizvo kundenderedzwa kwakaita mhuri kwamakamba kuti mwana wavo abatsirwe. Munhu wese anofunga kuti kana ava vanhu vane mari vachinzwai. Vanhu vanokwanisa kufonera mukuru wenyika vachinzwai. Pane imwe nyaya yekuti takatonza nzi bhadhara $150,000 kuti mwana wenyu abatsirwe. This is from the family statement. Ndikutora from family statement. Zvino munhu ari ordinary wo muZimbabwe, iniwo zvangu je ndisina baba vanogona kufonera president, vanogona kufonera minister, vasitorina kana namba yacho. Ndichatanga kuzvibvunza kuti ini ndirapwe chii chinodiwa. So pari kudiwa agent kuti nechiripo ripocho tidzidzise manesi nemadoctor kuti ventilator chii inoshanda sei. Muno muUK mune about 8,200 maventilator. Hurumende yatoona kuti nezviri kuitika nemaprojections aripo tichanida maybe 30,000 more. Toita sei? Ngatitaure neindustry tange kugadzira mamwe maventilator. MuZimbabwe discussion yemaventilator hatisi kutomboziva. Hurumende haisi kuudza vanhu zvinhu zvese izvi. Ndochimwe chinhu chiri important. Hurumende inofanira kushanda nekutaurira vanhu zviri kuitika nguva nenguva kuti situation iri panapa ichafamba ichienda pakati, ichafamba ichienda pakati. Izvezvi mumwe akanyora paTwitter kuti tine maventilator 15 muZimbabwe. Pa15 ndo ega ari kushanda. Anditi umwe wakanyora kuti hapana vaikwanisa kutaura kushandisa ventilator. Ko minister vehealth vari kumboti kudina nenyaya iyi, because munhu wese anoziva kuti a ventilator will be critical to keep people alive munhu achinge abata COVID. Now tikatarisa zvinoitika neprogression yezvirwere zvinonzi after 14 days ndopanotanga kushowa masymptoms dzimwe nguva. Handiti kureva kuti kana kune vamwe vanhu vakabata panguva iyi kubva patakaita first case, we are running out of days. 10 days zinokwana kutanga kudzidzisa manesi nemadokta kuti ventilator ndeiyi inoshandwa so, inoplagwa so pamunhu. But vanhu havasi kuzviita izvo, hatisi kuziva. Kana vari kuzviita kuuya tichivashoropodza kudai kureva kuti ivo havana kutipa information yakakwana yekuti tizoti izvi vazviita, izvi havana kuzviita. Saka toda kubvisa ikoko kusaziva kwatinako kuti hurumende iri kuitei, so that kana isusu takutaura kana watipa mukana so isusu Mike tichiti zviti tiri mapolice analyst toda kuziva kuti tine data rakakwana rabva kuhurumende, tochiva criticize tichiona kuti apa vakadai dai vadai zvobatsira. But iye zvino tiri kungoshanda nehearsay, tiri kushanda nemhuri yati zvakati, tiri kushanda nemafungidziro, tiri kushanda nekuti mumwe munhu ati akwatobuda mamwe makesi 2 kana 3 kwakati. Andiri kuona zvinotiisa panguva yekuti chero nesu vari kuti uyai mutaure takungotaurawo zvinomeka sense zvichibatanidza nezvaitika kune dzimwe nyika dzinotaurawo nevanhu vavo. Yedu haitauri nevanhu vavo, inoita kunge chimumu hurumende yedu haisi kuda kutaura nevanhu ichiudza vanhu zviri kuitika. Hatizoti nei.
Now, if we're highlighting some of the things, for example, some of the comments that are coming in, it's important for people to receive information. You heard Farai, it's not about who does what, when, and how, but Arguti, it's upon us to ensure that we all educate each other. How important is it for especially for people like you and I who are in important positions, who are, I guess, for lack of a better word, trendsetters, or people that follow and people understand where they turn to for information. How important is our role during a time like this? And of course, how do we make sure that the message gets to the most minute area in Zimbabwe?
Chekutanga kana uri munhu ane ngatitaure kunyanga vari pamusoro pedu mukukwanisa kuinfluensa vanhu mafungiro nemaitiro avo. Ino haisi nguva yekungomhanya kungonotaura kana kumhanya kungonoita zvinhu nekuti ndatoita. Kana waita chinhu make sure kuti waita nemazvo, so that ari kuzviita achanozviita chaizvo chaizvo sezvazviri. Pane mumwe akaita video yake ndikanokomenda zvandakakomenda, pakauya shamwari yangu akati nhai waona kuona kuti pakanganiswa zvakati kasira kubvisa. Kana uri munhu wapolice analyst ungataure zvakada. But inini mukuona kwandakaita ndakabva ndatodzokera ndikanoona kana zveshuwa pajambo zvakati nezvakati 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 nezvakati. Zvino panguva ino tine vanhu vatiri kutarisira kuti ava ndo vanenge vanoziva. Chekutanga hatikwanise kungoswera tatongopfuudza zvatapiwa nevamwe vanhu tisina kuzviverify. Tine responsibility Mike yekuti kana une chawanzwa unema networks, fonera uvunze vanhu vanoita zvepublic health, fonera uvunze vana chiremba, fonera uvunze vanhu vane ruzivo kuti nai ndanzwa zvakati ndizvo here, usati wazvifambisa kuenda kumberi, nekuti pamwe pacho kumhanya kwatiri kuita ndiko kuri kukonzera kuti vanhu vapedzisire vakuziva zvinhu zvisiri izvo. Ende kana chinhu chatoenda chatoonekwa nevanhu vangave 100 kana vanopfuura ipapa achichadzoke, munhu haachakwanise kudzoka kuzoona kuti wakabvisa wakadhilita, haachakwanise kuya kuzoona kuti wakazogadzirisa zvawataura, kana chaenda. Saka tine responsibility yekutsvaga isusu, kutogara pasi totsvaga kuti nai information iri kubuda iri kuti chii, pabuda statutory instrument yekuti government iri kuti zvakati iri kuti chii, kana isina kutsanangurwa kune macitizens vasinganzwisise zvepolisi kana chirungu, tochizvitora tochizviunpacka, tochidzidzisa vamwe kuti izvi zviri kutaurwa zviri kureva kuti zvakati, zvinogona kureva zvakati mumararamiro ako. Nyaya yekungoti mazuva ano chese chawangonzwa womhanya wakungononyora especially isiri field yako haina kunaka. Nezono ndakatonyo I think ndainyora paTwitter nchiudza vanhu kuti dzimwe nguva zvakangonaka kusataura pamusoro pezvinhu zvausinganzwisisi kuti izvi I don't understand. Ukakusi kwangu zvakafanana pawandibvunza kuti unemployment kuUK kwakamira sei, handingakwanisa kungotanga kuti ngobika mafiga kana ndandisina kunge ndazvitarisa. Haisi mhosva iwewe kuti hausi kuziva, hakuna munhu anoziva zvese. But dambudziko ratiri kuita nderevanhu vari kuziva zvese, padaunzi ndini ndamhanya. Hakuna macelebrity eCovid, ngatizvizive izvozvo. You cannot be a celebrity nekufa kwevanhu. Saka zvekuda kumhanya kunzanzi ndiwe watanga kupa vanhu, ndini ndatanga kuchidonhedza, ndini ndatanga nechakati, it's highly irresponsible. Ngative nenguva yekutanga tatarisa, ungoitawo research kako. Ende nekuda kwainternet kana unayo, hazvitori kana 20 minutes kugara pasi ungonotarisa kuti chii chiri kumboitika, vanhu vari kuti chii. Zuva nezuva makuseni paunomuka, tora nguva yekunodzidza kuti chii chaitika ndakarara, madevelopments ari kuitika ndeapi, ndeipi new information iri kubuda. Izvo pane munhu ndaona achinyora paTwitter anzi zvichabatsire because munhu wese autofanira kupfeka mamask because zviri kunzi zvaairborne. Handiti zvambonzi haisi airborne. Next thing ndakuenda kakunotarisa naye zviri kunzi hazvisi ndezvipi research nyowani iri kubuda, nekuti isusu tinokwanisa kunozvidzidza zvinhu izvi, tinokwanisa kunozviona, tochidzoka nazvo kune vamwe vedu tochivaudza izvi ndo zvabuda. Kana tisina zvekutaura ngatinyararei, kana tisingazive ngatinyararei. Haisi nguva yekumhanya kuda kunotsvaga mbiri nekuti hanzi covid. Zvino munhu wese aringotaura covid zvakati, covid zvakati, covid zvakati. Unorizive here? Watora nguva here? Kana uri kuda kutaura enda umbonodzidza wozodzoka wozodzidzisa.
Hayi siluka ndaba liyamuzwa umnumzana uGlenn Dliwayo uyachasisa ngempela ukuthi uqhakathekile ngempela ukuthi umuntu angaphonga ulahla umlomo nje ezikhulumela hanzi msangorasa mromo. Make sure ukuthi nxa ulombuzo consult a specialist. So now ngiyabona umnumzana uJason Maphosa uyazama ngempela ukungena kuhlelo. Ikhona ilink efakwe ngumnumzana uGibbs Dube, ngicela ufitizele khonapha Jason Maphosa uzama ukungena kuhlelo sibone ukuthi singakufaka na sizwe umbono wakho. Kodwa ezulukandaba just a couple of numbers that abantu can call, ikakhulukazi eZimbabwe nxa licabanga ukuthi kulethuba lokuthi maybe ngibanjwe ngalomkhuhlane. Ku Tel 1 ikakhulukazi abantu abale SIM card ye Tel 1 kule nombolo enengi esijiyeneyo that you can call to find out more information. Kule National Emergency Response line inombolo ngu 0800 2000, Wilkins Hospital 0800 9000. Grove, even though siyezwa abameli beParliament besithi Grove is not declared fit, but as is, it's still a center ngobulawayo that handles indaba lezi ze-coronavirus. Grove 1-800-9001. Mutare Hospital, abantu abasemutare 1-800-9002. Kweru Hospital 1-800-9003. Masvingo Hospital 1-800-9004. So Lilakushaila, you can call these numbers to and ask all these questions. Umkhuhlane lo, how is it functioning? Lizwele nje ukuthi kahle kahle what is going on and understand more. Lakho njalo ukuhamba kukhasi ele World Health Organization. Ku homepage vele ungahamba ku internet www.who.int, click the homepage itself has all the information that you need on the coronavirus. Not just the numbers of worldwide deaths, but they also give you more information as to ukuthi umuntu kumele ayenzeni ukube abe ngumuntu ohlanzekileyo, abe ngumuntu anokwanisa ukudzivirira kubatha chirwere ichi che-coronavirus. Abangenayo lisanda ukungena kuhlelo The Connection elilami uMike. Today on The Connection we're focusing on udubo lolu lwe-coronavirus global pandemic. The World Health Organization termed it. They're saying kuti sezvo chirwere ichi chatekeshera pasi rose. It's in South Africa. Lizwe umongameli Cyril Ramaphosa esesithi as of Thursday, ilizwe South Africa lilakho ukungena ngesikhiwa sithi i-shutdown, a local shutdown. Lapho ilizwe labe selivaliwe vele. Abanye bathanda ukuhleka besithi close for business. Not necessarily, but there's going to be a lockdown to ensure ukuthi abantu abangeni abaphumi for 21 days kwele South Africa. Sizwe njalo umongameli Emmerson Mnangagwa laye izolo esithi iZimbabwe ikhangela ukwenza into efanayo ukuze bavikele umkhuhlane lo from growing and making sure ukuthi hayiwa achingoyende pese phasi rose kwethe phasi rose chete but munyika yose saka ndiwo mathano athi athorwa nemthungamiriri wenyika takanzwa zvekare. For those that don't know, nasi zvikoro zvavarwa effectively nemhaka yokuti hurumende yeva Emmerson Mnangagwa vakati ngatimbovharai zvikoro for now, all primary, high school and kwelemeleka sithi ama-college, but eZimbabwe lithi ama-university asevaliwe ngenxa yokuthi uhulumende uyazama ngempela ukubona ukuthi balakho na ukuvikela the spreading of i-coronavirus. Sizwe njalo umongameli Emmerson Mnangagwa esithi not more than 100 people at a time. That is something that's led to abantu abafana, people like, for example, people in the church communities. So basically, okay, maybe so sizama ukukhonza sisebenzisa inkundla zokuxhumana bachishandisa nandemthande takawana umkhana wokuthaura na Reverend Useni Sibanda. He was one of the reverends that we managed to get a hold of, and Reverend Useni Sibanda vakati aiwa danwe vanotambira zvikuru. Why? Because they feel as though they want to make sure that, of course, the churches play their role in ensuring that chirwere were able to beat it as a society. Pachirongwanas tina Glenn Liwayo. Earlier on, we also had Farai Muvuti. Was still trying to see Farai, can he come back and bonangani in network yahlupa sometimes. But okwamanje si lokhu siqhubekela phambili sixoxa lo mnumzana uGlenn Liwayo. Glenn is a young guy. He's out there in New York and the United Kingdom. Limzwile esithi uku-quarantine mina angivumi ngalo mbuzo wakhe. Glenn is in self-isolation. Kulo mehluko omkhulu zulukandaba, you quarantine umuntu oteste positive for umkhuhlane lo owe-coronavirus, and then thina abantu that don't have umkhuhlane lo were in what we call in self-isolation. Why is it important? Sizwe amalunga awenhlanganiso World Health Organization besithi kuqhakathekile ngempela ukuthi abantu they keep a certain space between each other to ensure ukuthi, of course, awubambi umkhuhlane lo. Saka ndizo zvakatarwa sangano re World Health Organization earlier on. Kana murva opi namchirongwa, you might have missed this, but Glenn was highlighting how England uko anzi kana mchibuda mese muri 2 meters between each other. Which begs my next question, Glenn. How are they measuring the 2 meters? It's not like panem purisa rufamba ne ruler. Almost 2 meters. How are they measuring this?
All right. So the first thing is it's only 2 meters apart if you're people who are not of the same household.
Okay.
Yeah, but kana muri vanhu vemhuri imwe chete, it's okay. Social and the World Health Organization. World Health Organization not 1 meter. UK yakati 2 meters. Now, how they measure it, I mean, it's not like panemuna achafamba achitarisa. Those are nangati chambotaura zviya kuti, but vataura kuti madanho vakaisa nezero manero. Mapurisa ane kodzero yekuma enforcer through mafine kana kudispesa magathering. Asisa zvanambotaura ukatarisa approach iri kushandiswa nehurumende yekuno ndeyekuti muri vanhu vakuru, kana tichinge takupai zvinhu izvi muchakwanisa kuzviita imimi. Handisati ndabuda hangu nhasi kuti ndione, asi mazuva atipfuure aya painzi vanoshandirai kudzimba, dzimwe nguva ndaitobuda ndichiona vanhu vachitongoramba vachingofamba zvingori normal zvavaita nguva iyoyo. So zvinenge zvaaku vanhu kuti vaona kuti zvakamira sei. Asi sekufunga kwangu pano zvikaramba zvichiescalate vachinge vaona kuti vanhu havasi kuramba vachiteerera, ndipo panogona kuunzwa mapurisa kuti achienforce zvakadai so sezvandataura kuti kufamba kwacho 2 meters dzinogona kutombobuda nekuti kana vanhu vari kuteedzera zvanzi usabude unless ukuenda kunotenga magroceries, unless ukuenda kuma-essentials, unless ukuenda for medical care, unless uri kuenda kubasa nemabasa ari essential ekuti haukwanise kuita uri kumba. Zvinoreva izvoti kubuda panze hausangani nemunhu. Ini ndane mazuva aminomangani anogona kusvika kana more than a week ndisati ndabuda pakanharaunda kandinogara kana kutobuda mumba mandinogara ndogona kuverenga kuti amazuva mangani. Saka I think 2 meters dzangova kuti munhu ungova ne-an idea yekuti ndinofanira kuzviseparata sei nevamwe. Zvandakaonawo mukufamba ndezvekuti when I go out, generally if you see a person who's coming your way, you generally just diverge. Mega hapana nokuudzwa kuti zvakati unongoenda uko ungoenda uko. Saka manzwisisiro angu ndekuti vari kutora iyo approach yekuti muri vanhu vakuru kana takupa information we're going to be responsible for it. Ndo saka izvoni ukatarisa kuti ndogona kubvunza kuti vanoziva sei kuti wambobuda, because hanzi munhu nemunhu anobvumidzwa kubuda for one exercise per day. Kungava kunomhanya, kungava kunoita cycle kana a walk, but how do they know? Unoziva sei kuti ndambobuda ndabuda kaka kechitu kaka kechi3. Yanyaya kuti munhu nemunhu ane responsibility yake kurwisa corona iyi nekutoziva kuti azvichengetedze iye kuti asabatire.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, we're wrapping up now, Glenn. We're headed towards the last 5 minutes of the conversation today. We are highlighting Zurigitika, especially in places within that are our neighbors in Zimbabwe. We see places like Botswana closing their borders. We saw President Mnangagwa now. I think it's time to maybe tumbo varaoma border of Zimbabwe. How is this something that you think will affect the economy?
Generally,
is the economy even a precedent? Is it something we should be worrying about with Zimbabwe?
That's where I was about to go. So when borders are closed, at least it does not affect imports and exports and trade generally. It's being closed for human traffic. This is my understanding. Now, when you look at our economy, it's mostly a net importing economy. We import a lot of things we use. We don't have industry. We don't have a functional industry, so everything is imported. But another very important demographic that you then bring to mind when you think about this, so many families and households are taken care of by cross border. Vangava vachienda kuZambia, vangava vachienda kuSouth Africa. Vanhu ivava patori aspect inoaffectwa ipapo. In terms of closing our economies to human movement, I mean, we were virtually almost I'm going to say this and it might be controversial. We haven't been printing passports for people. I mean, in a way, to an extent, that has been a limiting measure of getting people outside the country, stopping people from moving in and out. So in terms of using our border control to try and control the spread of corona, I don't think it will have a very large impact relative to the things that we can do within our borders. What I think the government needs to focus on is the measures that they are taking within the population in the country. Right now, there is an urgent need to have health promotion kumarua. There's an urgent need to have health promotion everywhere to really start having a scenario planning yekuti my business achaita sei, vanhu vachaita sei, vanhu vachadye, kana zvakadai zvadai. And we've been hearing that the government has been getting money. Zvatiri kuona zvekuti vanhu vanotanga kuspreya kuspreya mishonga yekuuraya corona nezvimanhangiri zvekuminda zviya. I think we need to start thinking they really need to start thinking about those internal operations that are necessary to make sure that they contain the virus and they stop it from escalating. And that also needs them thinking, because now government is a major player. Even when you're talking about the transport sector, they are a major player there. They need to start thinking about all these things.
I'm gonna have to hold you there. Go and do so thank you so much, Nokupinda Mchirongwa. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking time out. Stay isolated, stay safe. We appreciate you once again. Thank you so much, Nokupinda Mchirongwa.
Certainly, Michael. Certainly, Mike. Thank you for having me on the program as well.
All right, you heard there from Umnumzana Glenn Liwayo, uGlenn, young guy based in England, is also a policy analyst. Njalo umnumzana uFarai Muvuti ngomunye wabasakhulayo who's out there in England. So mthakazo omuhle, we just received some breaking news. Tukunzwa ukuthi kune chimwe chizvarwa cheZimbabwe changa chichidzidza kuno kuAmerica ku Andrews University ngale eMichigan. Ibizo lakhe Melissa Jacqueline Mukutiri. Melissa passed away due to udaba lo coronavirus. Omunye wabasakhulayo who was out here in the United States, another Zimbabwean. So I guess that brings the total Zimbabwean count that we know of to 2. But only one elizweni lizwe lapha emsakazweni wethu Studio 7 uMelissa Jacqueline ngomunye wabasakhulayo who passed on ngale eMichigan. So ngenani kuhlelo namuhla Zulukandaba, we're going to have a live program, well, not live, uxolo Zimbabwe muhle, njengoba liyazibonela nje I'm working from home, but we're going to have uhlelo lwethu lwabasakhulayo on a radio as usual. So ngenani kuhlelo and tell us what you think. Lakho kusithumezela imibono yenu ku WhatsApp kunombolo ethi +1 202 465 0318. Jason Maposa ngibonele ingempela ukuthi uzamile ukungena kuhlelo kodwa asatholanga ithuba lokungenisa kuhlelo, kodwa siyabonga kakhulu ngalombono wakho, siyabona njalo ngokuzama ukungena kuhlelo. Isikhathi ngiyabona uFarai usanda ukungena kodwa Farai, we're just literally wrapping up. Thank you so much for your participation. I thank you, Glenn, so thank you for trying again. We appreciate it. Mtsakaza muhle Zimbabwe muhle tashka kumagume chirongwa chedu cha nasi ndinotenda zvikuru munhu wese apinda muchirongwa. Thank you so much to everybody who obhale imibono yake. Ngibona uAida ubhalile njalo uJason Maposa. Ngenani kuhlelo mtsakazo muhle, bhalani imibono yenu ku WhatsApp kunombolo +1 202 465 0318. Anokoneka inemfaro ndinowenu Mike Hobe. Zimbabwe muhle, muri Zimbabwe, stay safe, clean your hands, wash your hands as much as possible, and if you can afford it, sanitize your hands. Bye bye.